And this is Vicki from Learning Home Volunteers, and welcome back to our learning session entitled Marks. This week's activities are focused on a different kind of medium, clay, and some different ways to paint. So let's get started. This is activity number 8. Let's mark clay. Clay is such a great material and one that both young and old like to explore. The clay that you get may arrive a little bit dry, so you want to fill your squirt bottle with water and then squirt the clay to moisten it up. When sprayed with water, the consistency of the clay will change and make the clay much more pliable. There are so many different things to do with clay. You can combine it with different natural materials, alive and dead, to actually create a sculpture like this little boy. And then we can also explore the texture of clay, its hardness, its smoothness, and the way that we can change the clay. So here are some questions you could ask while your child explores clay that will help them to think about what their sensations are and to extend the exploration as it takes place. So, how does the clay feel on your hands? What about on your feet, on your arm, your elbow? What happens to the clay when you press your fingers into it? How else can you actually change the clay? Can you take pieces off of it? Can you put the pieces back together? All of these are good inspiration starting places to allow the child to take over. Beyond manipulating the clay, we can see how other objects interact with the clay. You could certainly push things into the clay, beans, rocks, beads, sticks, whatever. You can also imprint the object by taking the object out once you've actually pushed it into the clay, and you'll get indentations that look like this. Or you could roll something onto the clay or pound it, leaving a deep impression. You could scrape letters or numbers or shapes into the clay. You could combine materials to actually make a scene like they've done here with pasta. You could create a tile that takes two different kinds of clay pieces and puts it on top of each other. They connect actually by wetting the underclay with water and the thing that you're trying to press down, and then press it on top of it and it'll stick. All of the clay that we've given you left out in the air for a couple days will eventually dry and become a permanent memory of what you and your child did. They can be painted afterward. It's dry if you actually choose to do that. This is activity number 9. This activity needs a couple of things before you start. You're going to need diluted paint, mostly water and then some paint. If your child wants to use colors other than the primary colors of paint that we provided, you need to have them mix the paints together in a bowl to make those colors. Then spoon the color out into the squirt bottle and then add the water. Put the top on and then shake. We used about 1 cup of water to every 2 tablespoons of paint. We took the paper outside and put it on the ground and then squirted, and we get this kind of droplet looking patterns that you see on this first photo. The second way that we did was actually to tape a piece of paper up on the fence using tape or pens and then squirt paint on it. I love the way that the drops kind of ran. And remember that all the paint that we send is washable, so just a squirt of water and it'll fall to the ground and no one will even know it happened. This is activity number 9. Let's mark on clear plastic. What you want to get out for this is some plastic wrap, like saran wrap. And then first on the plate, what you're going to want to do is put the saran wrap down and then drip, whatever colored paints that you're interested in using. So we're going to use it to actually paint a rock. And so what we want to do is to take the rock and put it into the paint, and then wrap the rock with the plastic wrap, and then keep the wrap on it and then let it dry. While it's wet, you can kind of smoosh the colors around underneath the plastic wrap. And then after a couple days after it's dry, you could just take the wrap off and you'll end up with a beautiful rock. Another way is to use plastic wrap is while you're actually painting a wet painting like we're seeing here. You can see it's quite wet. And then you want to cover it with saran wrap like we see happening here by pressing it down. Then using your fingers, you want to crease or scrunch the plastic wrap, which will cause texture and patterns to form in the paint. Let it dry overnight, leaving the plastic wrap in place. And once it is dry, you can completely peel off the wrap like this, and you get some great patterns underneath on the paper that came from that wrap. One last idea is to take the saran wrap and wrap it around an inverted table. You can paint directly onto the wrap, and then when it's dry, you can cut the wrap off the table and tape it to the window, and you have yourself a little sun catcher. Well, that's all for this week. We're excited for our next week's session, which will focus on Hispanic Heritage Month and pumpkin exploration. I'll see you then.